Hi there again, everybody. Sandy Jowan here. Welcome to my kitchen, and glad you're with me to create another recipe from my recipe box today. This is a really good one. It's actually cranberry muffins that are great for breakfast and snacks anytime. What's special about this recipe is that it was sort of crafted by my daughter Nikki, who many of you know, and myself over the years, into a muffin recipe that's pretty much very flexible and foolproof, and from a sugar content can be flexed up or down depending on your taste. So, you know, Nikki as a kid always liked muffins, but she didn't have a really big sweet tooth. So these muffins, you know, over the years, looking at a lot of recipes and making a lot of batches and tasting them and adjusting things, you know, have come down to this recipe that works really well. It's pretty easy. You don't need a mixer. It's all done by hand in 2 bowls. And they come out terrific every time. They're also really flexible in some other ways too that we'll talk about as I put this together for you. So, great one from the recipe box today, and I'm happy to share it with all of you. We'll start with the dry, so we have a bowl for the dry ingredients and a bowl for the wet ingredients, and then we're going to combine them into a batter. So as I said, we have whole wheat. This is 1.25 cups of whole wheat flour. The whole wheat flour is not something you can be flexible with. You should do 1.5 cups. And then 1 cup of regular all-purpose flour goes in the bowl. Again, not something you can flex up or down. That's pretty much standard for these muffins. Here's where you can be flexible is the sugar. I have 3/4 cup. The recipe card actually calls for 1.25 cups. To me, that's great if you like your muffins sweeter. But I, like to cut down on the sugar content if I can, and so I've cut it back, pretty much almost in half. I don't know if I'd go further back than 3/4, but that's what we're doing today. So then we actually have some baking soda. This is baking soda here. It's 3/4 teaspoon. And we have also baking powder. Baking powder is 1.5 teaspoons. So between those 2 things, you're going to get a muffin that rises really nicely. And then 1/2 teaspoon each of salt, cinnamon, and nutmeg. So again, you can be flexible here with the actual spices that you want to add into the muffins. You can, use things that you like. Maybe you want to do ginger one day. Maybe you want to clove element in there. You can experiment with the spices. Don't forget the salt, very necessary, or you're gonna have bland muffins. And then that's pretty much it for the dry ingredients. So with my whisk, I use a whisk that's, it's kind of big in terms of the amount of space between the areas of the whisk, but just so that it mixes easily. But you can use whatever whisk you have. You don't even need a whisk, maybe you just want to use a fork or a spoon. But I like the distribution that a whisk gives you, and if there's any lumps in there that you get out of the baking soda or the baking powder, or even the spices, depending, the whisk usually takes care of that. The other thing I wanted to say about this is when you're using your spices, spices don't last forever. They say 6 months. I go way more than 6 months with my spices, which I probably shouldn't do, but I do. If you want to put a little bit more, it says 1/2 teaspoon, but if they're not as new and as vibrant as they should be, put a little more. Put 3/4, put a teaspoon, put whatever you like. Experiment, like I said. So, very simple. There's our dry ingredients, and you can see it's real basic. So now we'll go for the wet. You start out with 2 eggs. Now again, what I usually do is I open my eggs, in a separate bowl, just to make sure that you're not corrupting the egg that you've already got in there. But in this case, since we only have 2, I can, actually that's wrong. I can open the second one here. I'm telling you what to do and I'm not actually doing it. That's good. Make sure the egg is okay. And then dump it in the bowl. Okay. And then they should be beaten. So I just break them up at this point and give them a little whisk so that we can add our other wet ingredients to the eggs. So that means that we need 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. I'm just using Wesson vegetable oil. Always smell your oil first, make sure that it's good, and don't use a heavy oil. Don't use olive oil, don't substitute anything that, you know, where the oil is gonna have flavor. You want a really neutral oil for these muffins. But if you have canola, grapeseed, maybe you might give that a try, but I wouldn't use a heavy olive oil. And for this batch of muffins, we're going to be using apple juice, just very light apple juice, 1/2 cup. The recipe actually calls for orange juice, and if you have orange juice, use it. If you don't have any juice at all, you can get away with using a 1/2 cup of water. I mean, I've been desperate enough with these muffins to actually use a 1/2 cup of bar water, you know, like with a nice orangey flavor or something to give it some extra oomph. But today we're using apple juice. And that goes in. And then the last thing for a wet ingredient in this particular muffin that we're going to use is homemade cranberry sauce, 1 cup. Now, not everybody has homemade cranberry sauce hanging around. After Thanksgiving, it's a great way to use up extra cranberry sauce that you have that you never know what to do with it. You can put it in this muffin and put it into the wet ingredients and smush it around. Aside from that, what I would do at this point is put in some fresh fruit. The original recipe calls for dried cranberries that you could actually soak in the orange juice and then use both, right? If you like raisins, if you like to cut up apples, sometimes I use canned peaches. I put a cup of fruit in. But today, since I have cranberry sauce, and I actually tried the cranberry sauce in this recipe and I really, really liked how it came out, to the point where I made a whole other batch of fresh cranberry sauce just for this purpose. So I wanted you to see this and talk a little bit about all the different fruit options. The fruit can go right, like I said, into the wet ingredients, or you can wait and put the fruit in after you combine the wet and the dry. So you can put the fruit in at that point if you're using fresh fruit or canned fruit. So in goes cranberry sauce. This cranberry sauce is really good. It's got orange zest and orange juice and fresh cranberries and sugar. It's really quite delicious and it makes a really awesome muffin. All right, and then I'm whisking together, very simply, putting the cranberry sauce into the eggs and the oil. Oh, and I forgot another dry ingredient. Good thing I thought of it. Milk, 3/4 cup. You do need this milk. Whole milk, 1% milk, any kind of milk you want. Now we have all the wet ingredients. See, you've been making the recipe for so long and so many years, you still could get something wrong. And if you do, oh well, start again. We all make mistakes in life. Big ones and little ones, it seems. All right, so we have the wet. You can't really see this, but it's very pretty color pink. All right, now I'm gonna pour the wet into the dry. Plop, plop, go the cranberries. With the whisk. And very slowly, because if you don't go slow, you're gonna have flour and dry ingredients all over the place, but very slowly, we're gonna mix the two together. So notice you don't need any kind of a mixer to do this. You don't want to over mix these muffins. And if you do them in a stand mixer or with a hand mixer, the batter's just gonna be overworked. And you're not gonna get the same type of muffin that you would if you did it by hand. So Nikki and I have been making these muffins for years and years and years. I don't have a date on this recipe card, but they're so delicious once they're done. They're even, you know, they come out even, the same consistency pretty much every time. As you can tell, the batter is, you know, somewhere in the middle. It's not too loose, it's not too tight. And I really want you to see this. So I'm actually gonna walk up to this camera and I'm gonna show you. There's the batter. And you can see when I stir it, the consistency of it. It's got the nice pieces and flecks of cranberry running through it. All right. So now let's see what comes next. So we got to get this into our muffin tins. So I use for that, I use a 1/4 cup scoop. So here's my muffin tins. They've been around forever. It's Valentine's, as you can tell from the tablecloth. I've got pink cupcake holders in there. I'm just gonna do a couple for you here so you can get the hang of it. So again, this is a 1/4 cup scoop. You could use 2 spoons, however you get your batter into your cupcakes. Papers is whatever method floats your boat is fine. And you just get them in there and you fill them 3/4 of the way. If you do that, you should get 18 muffins out of this recipe. Sometimes I get heavy-handed and I overfill them and then I don't get 18. But basically you should get 18 muffins, so try to space yourself out so that you do, so the more the merrier. And then once I get them all full, which I'm not going to do on camera for you, but I will show you when I'm done, what I do is I sprinkle each muffin with a combination of sugar and cinnamon with a little spoon. The combo is 2 tablespoons of white sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. That's the ratio that I use. And I just take it and sprinkle a little bit on the top, give it that extra sugary crust when it bakes. You don't want it that sweet, omit that step, they're still just as good. So once they're all full, put them in the oven, 400 degrees for 19 minutes in my oven. That's the perfect sweet spot for these muffins for me, is 19 minutes in my oven. Play with yours. It might be a little less, it might be a little more. Not every oven is the same. You know, so just keep your eye on them when you first make them, and you'll find what your sweet spot is also. So 19 minutes sounds odd, but that's what it is for my oven. Take them out, let them cool, test them with a toothpick, let them cool on a rack, and enjoy them. And you'll hopefully find that you can, you know, do your own thing with this recipe and make these muffins unique to the flavors that you like. So that's it for the prep on the muffins. I'm going to put them in the oven after I finish up all of my my muffin tin here, and I'll show you what they look like. And hopefully it'll come out great and be wonderful. Thanks for joining me again today from my recipe box, Cranberry Muffins with Sandy. Hope you're all well, and hope to see you next time. Take care, everybody.